Ladies and gentlemen, subscribers, wherever in the world you might be, welcome to the Mining Journal, the ongoing Mining Journal series about global exploration. Today, we are dealing with the Macquarie Arc, or the Lachlan Fold Belt, as it's called, a very prospective piece of terrain, at least in my mind, in New South Wales. We have three explorers and a couple of questioners for today's panel. Gentlemen, if you could introduce yourselves, beginning with Sam.
No, thank you, Rick. Sam Spring, President CEO of Kincora Copper. We're focused on predominantly copper porphyries in the Macquarie Arc, both the northern extension undercover and the southern part. Our team's really led by a number of individuals, geologists that have had considerable success. John Holliday, our chair of our technical committee, who was very hands-on with the discovery of Cadia, which is the largest mine in the district, and backed up by Peter Lehman, who's had a fair bit of success in the district. We've drilled 30,000 metres in New South Wales, focused on porphyries to date. We've got some pretty exciting partnerships and targets that we're keen to get on with. But I'll hand that over to another panel member there, Rick.
Peter, your turn.
Sure, thanks, Rick. Peter Jordan, MD of Waratah Minerals. I've been working in the Lachlan myself as a geo most of the time for 17 years, and in the corporate roles for over the last 4 or 5 years. Waratah has made a recent acquisition of a high-quality discovery opportunity about 5 kilometres away from Cadia, and it's sort of tapping into a new search space which is emerging in that part of the world. So, we're fairly new as the company coming back into the Lachlan.
Brent.
Yeah, good day. Brent Cook, exploration analyst and economic geologist. I've been doing this for 30 plus years now. I spent some time in Eastern Australia, including the Lachlan Fold Belt. I spent a lot of time analyzing very early stage through development and mining projects based on island arcs and porphyry related system, which is what we're talking about. I was Rick's analyst for a few years, and also initiated the Exploration Insights newsletter, now run by Joe Mazumdar. And now I'm sort of a semi-retired and just do what I want. A lot of that is involving geology.
That was a great good day for a guy from southern Utah. I really appreciate that. Alistair, well, why don't you introduce yourself? And
Absolutely. So, Alistair Waddell, I'm the president and CEO of Inflection Resources. We're a Canadian listed company focused on exploring the Macquarie Arc. I'm an exploration geologist, about 30 years in the business. About half my career has been with the major mining companies and half on the junior side of the business. Spent many years focusing on early stage exploration, project generation, and we've been actively exploring the Macquarie Arc since 2018, and we've got a large partnership there with AngloGold Ashanti, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Indeed. Anthony, tell us about yourself, please. Introduce yourself.
G'day everybody, Anthony Reid. I've got a PhD in structural geology and tectonics and geochronology through the University of Melbourne from many years ago. I've been working in the Geological Survey of South Australia for quite some time. I've been doing a bit of consulting after that, and then I've recently joined Fleet Space Technologies, and I've taken on the role of Head of Geology. Just been an amazing opportunity to see this new technologies up close and personal, so it's fantastic.
Anthony, since we were last, we're going to make you go first. Tell
you.
Our audience, that part of the audience at least that isn't from Australia, about the Macquarie Arc. Tell us something about the macrogeology and why you feel it's attractive, why you feel that this panel is worthwhile for investors and speculators.
So the Macquarie Arc is an Ordovician arc system connected to the Paleo-Pacific Ocean. It is a major kind of unit in what we call the Tasmanides, which is basically the eastern third of the Australian continent. It formed above an east-dipping subduction system, probably sort of several series of subduction zones through the Ordovician out in that part of the world. And therefore, it's highly prospective. It has this really interesting oceanic/continental substrate. and the metasomatism that you see in the deep mantle above these subduction zones is really priming the lithosphere for significant volumes of copper to be released during post-subduction melting, and that's pretty much exactly what we see in places like the Andes, and that's what we see in the Ordovician in the Macquarie Arc as well. And places like Cadia and other deposits through there really bear out the mineral potential in the region.
You acquitted yourself very well with no script. Thank you. Brent, do you have anything to add? You have, for as long as I've known you, I think specialized really in epithermal golds and in porphyries. So tell us what you have to say about this system.
Well, certainly it's a prospective belt. That's been proven by what's been found at Cadia, Ridgeway, Cowell, etc. What's interesting about this panel here is we're now looking undercover, blind, basically. And that's the key to what's happening here. And I think one thing that's worth pointing out is if it wasn't for the Cadia discovery, Newcrest would not have had or certainly a junior mining company could not have found the Ridgeway deposit, given the amount of time it took to, drill out and put together the geology and the science behind vectoring in on where Ridgeway was, because it's under 500 meters of essentially barren rock. Maybe the top above that 100 to 200 meters has some form of alteration, basically very little mineralization. And it's that vectoring and time and money that Newcrest was able to put into it that led to that discovery. A junior mining company on its own could never have done that. And what's interesting about these guys here is they've all got major backers, major mining company backers that are funding the work and science it's going to take to find these things. So I think that's what strikes me about this is we're in essentially a new belt, or a never really explored belt.
So for whoever wants the next question, what I want to do to get the audience into the discussion is talk about the size of the prize. We're talking, I guess, about Cadia. We're talking about Cowell. We're talking about North Park. Anybody who wants to start off by describing any of the three, but by the time I'm done this question, I want to have had an overview of each of the three so that our listeners will understand why we're doing this, what the size of the prize is. This is clearly not an academic exercise. These are 3 tier 1 deposits. So who wants to have a crack at that?
I'll have a go there, Rick. I'll kick it off anyway, and the boys can finish it. Look, Cadia Valley is the real jewel in the belt here. I mean, it's growing. It's over 50 million ounces of gold and over 10 million tonnes of copper. So it's globally significant gold-rich porphyry complex, and there's epithermals there as well. And then, of course, you've got with an alkalic flavour. So there is a very fertile flavour to that porphyry complex, which is recognisable when you can actually identify and chase that style. And Cowell's emerged as a really significant epithermal system, which has porphyry connections to it as well. But they found so much epithermal gold. It's gone from, since it was purchased from Barrick 10 years ago, Evolution have added another 9 million ounces. So it's up over 11 million ounces total endowment. So very significant in a global sense as well. And they're starting to hit their record numbers, production numbers in the last month and quarter. So it'll start to become more widely known as a globally significant mining operation. But they're the 2 big ones. And of course, North Park's, where Sam and Alistair are sort of working up in that part of the world is globally significant in its own right as well as a copper porphyry complex.
Anybody have anything to add in that discussion?
I think one thing that's, as Peter sort of touched on, the size of the metal endowment's significant, but their footprints are equally significant. Haiti, for example, you've got a magmatic complex that's 5.7 k's in total strike. You've got 2 stones, 5 porphyries within that. You've got, as Brent and yourself would have seen many times over, Rick, these series of deposits and clusters. And as has already been touched on, where a number of the groups here are looking for new porphyry complexes, some undercover, some where there has been significant exploration done. But the regional geophysics, which is pretty predominant and pretty good in New South Wales, does give you a pretty good feel of where you want to be on these volcanic arcs. Towards the north, where there hasn't been much exploration, you do go under post-mineral cover, but you can see from the regional geophysics pretty well where you want to be. And these complexes being of that sort of scale do stand out in regional magnetics. So that's a really interesting opportunity as we see it, is that you've potentially got the biggest part of the Macquarie Arc sitting under post-mineral cover that hasn't been well explored, and you've already got 106 million ounce gold endowment in the more mature parts of the belt.
Sam, I'm going to need you to answer the next question with a little more volume. I don't know if the other people have heard you, if it's just my 71-year-old ears, but I'm nervous about the whole of the Mining Journal subscriber list trying to hear you. So, moving on, I think everybody on the call understands that trying to, as Brent pointed out, explore for porphyries is not for sissies. Particularly exploring for porphyries undercover. So if I could have a discussion about the unique challenges involved in what each of you are doing, and by the way, I'm going to get around to letting you tell me what you're doing, but I want to talk very generally, first of all, about the challenges exploring for porphyries or related epithermal gold systems, particularly undercover. And Sam, since you were last and I admonished you about volume, I'm going to let you be first.
Yeah, no, you're right, Rick. I think the regional geophysics is very good for suggesting where you want to be within the arc and where these major complexes are. But then what are the different tools at your disposal to be able to refine? Where do you find, as Brent says, Acadia Ridgeway under 500 metres worth of cover? How do you take that search space, bring it into a deposit scale system? And I think the various different groups here, obviously Anthony from Fleet Space is providing some new technology, looking at the belt in a different way. We've got a survey in partnership with them at our Ningen project that likely sits under 200-300 metres worth of cover. How do you search within that space and I guess refine that the best way? I guess a constant theme I think you'll hear is different partnerships. We've got one with Fleet Space, we've got one with Anglo Gold Ashanti as well, who Alice has got partnerships for, but it takes time and it takes systematic exploration. It's using all the different tools that are at your disposal, smart geology, smart geophysics, and one good thing about having the likes of Acadia and North Parks and Cal is there's been a lot of research done on those deposits that you can then apply to try and find the next big one.
Peter, the same question for you. I want you to describe something about the process, target generation, the thesis, and the method by which you test the thesis, particularly undercover.
Yeah, no problem, Rick. Look, it's they're fascinating mineral systems to work within, you know, and you can vector within them. You know, alteration mapping is really important, and you can do that with modern multi-element geochemistry really effectively. I was lucky to be a part of the Boda discovery team, sort of worked on that for 11 years. And the learnings from that discovery in the same belt as Cadia, Northern Molong Belt, there was a lot of learnings that came out of that because the geochemical signature of Boda was unexpected. You know, it was copper poor, but it was gold rich and it had a very distinct Pathfinder suite, which the industry as a whole, you know, wasn't expecting. But when that discovery came through, the whole industry had a step change, and it opened up a new search space, basically, which in that case wasn't undercover. So I respect the undercover story is important, and but equally there is a new search space that I can see that's opened up in the East Lachlan, which is essentially close to these major intrusive complexes. But when you look in the detail, the really big ones are actually wall rock hosted porphyry, so Ridgeway, Cadia East, the two largest ones, Ridgeway being the largest or highest grade gold porphyry in the world, a sweet spot, very high grade zone, structurally controlled zone. That is not in the main intrusive complex. So a lot of previous porphyry exploration in the belt, you know, through the 70s and 80s, early 90s when it was really heaving, was focused in the magnetic highest, was focused in the main intrusive complexes. And if you didn't change that strategy, you wouldn't have found Ridgeway, you wouldn't have found Cadia East. So that's where Waratah's got an opportunity at a moment where we're playing in that search space, which is not necessarily that deep. But certainly a hell of a lot more for the Lachlan and East Lachlan to give. Back in the late 60s, people generally, the prevailing knowledge for the industry in the area was you couldn't preserve porphyry epithermal systems because the rocks were too old. There were explorers back in those days looking for VMSs. That's what they thought could be preserved in these really ancient terrains. Because, of course, and it is important sort of process, that preservation process, to understand and think about. So yeah, there's lots to do in this belt. There's lots of discoveries to be made. There's emerging knowledge breakthroughs in terms of the connection between the epithermals and the porphyries, and in those modern techniques, geophysics and geochemical, being conscious that the signature can be different depending on what sort of level in the system you are. I think the industry is going to continue to make important discoveries.
Alistair, the same question.
Well, Inflection's very much focused on the completely covered portion of the arc, so we truly have no outcrop whatsoever to deal with. So we're reliant on primary data sets, mostly collected by the government of New South Wales in the form of airborne magnetics and large-scale gravity surveys. And in addition to that, we've been collecting our own primary data in the form of ANT, the geophysical data set that I'm sure Anthony will talk to. But we've taken a really direct approach just by doing lots and lots of drilling in partnership with Anglo Gold. And a little bit of the secret sauce for what we do is just getting the cost of drilling down. So we're using what we call mud rotary drilling, where we can drill a cost of about 50 to 60 Australian dollars per meter down through the post-mineral cover that's masking the prospective geology. And then we do short diamond core holes into the basement. So we've taken very much a probabilistic approach to test large numbers of targets across the entire portfolio, and doing this just by testing the targets very cheaply and as cost effectively as possible. So we think by drilling 2 to 3 shallow core holes into each of these targets we generated, we're able to get a sense of whether we're in a mineralized system or not. And the key here is being able to kill the target as quickly as possible and move on to the next one. So it's a very disciplined and sort of approach to testing lots and lots of targets, and having the partnership with Anglo Gold has really enabled us to de-risk that model in many ways. So we're not having to raise capital to test these arguably high-risk targets, although I would argue that the low risk, depending on the scale of the prize here. But if we can test a target for less than $100,000 and move on to the next one, a particular target's got the potential in terms of size to deliver a true tier 1 discovery, then I think that's good value for money.
So, Anthony, I'd like your overview about the application of technology, the application of new techniques, and what's appropriate in the Macquarie Arc.
Thanks, Rick. So Fleet Space is really focused on an end-to-end sort of solution in which we are looking at multiple geophysical parameters. It's not as Peter said, and I think Sam said as well, it's no point just using one geophysical method. Okay, so in the covered regions, the passive seismic method, which we call ambient noise tomography, is incredibly valuable and very useful. It's quite well suited to picking out the depth to basement, so you can easily sort of see the cover thickness in there, and that obviously really helps with drill targeting in terms of planning and costing out drilling. How deep is this going to have to be? How are we going to pay for this? So that's really important. But on top of that, the ambient noise tomography is really showing you different velocity contrasts in the basement rock itself. And our velocity is all to do with density, it's to do with structure, it's to do with lithology. So what Fleet has been trying to do with these amazing companies that we're working with here is look at multiple scales as well. So you start with the big regional geophysical images, You do a very large kind of sort of multi-tenement sort of scale surveys, and you can pick up some of these major intrusive complexes, which we've been talking about. And then, once you've got some areas that you're of interest, more of interest, given their geometry, given their size and so on, then you can go in and do more focused surveys to really help refine exactly which targets based on your magnetics and gravity usually. But then your ambient noise tomography is really telling you exactly which targets look like they're intrusive and which ones look like they're the alteration related to those intrusives. And Peter mentioned the relationship between the intrusive complexes and the wall rock hosted mineralisation. And I think this is some really key learnings that we're finding with the ambient noise tomography, is that the boundary zones or the edges of some of these high velocity features can be the most interesting in terms of mineralisation.
Brent, before I move on, do you have any questions?
I did have one question. I'm not familiar with this ANT. How does it actually work?
Fantastic. So ambient noise tomography. So it's in the name, ambient, as in where there's not an active source here. So Fleet has its own proprietary seismometers, which are called geodes. They are highly sensitive little instruments that just almost like a little pot plant. You dig a tiny little hole, incredibly low impact on the surface, tiny little hole, plant them in the ground, pat them down just like you're potting a petunia or something like that. It sits there listening. Fleet Space's technology is actually unique in that these sensors are connected through to satellites, so you can see them in real time. So you're actually sitting there on your computer back in Perth or wherever you want to be, in Orange preferably, and you can look at the signal to noise ratio changing with this technique. So with Fleet Space's technique. So it's ambient noise. So you'll be listening to background noise. So it comes from trucks, trains, wind. If you're closer to the ocean, you get sort of background ocean noises as well. All of that transmits energy through the ground, and these seismometers, incredibly sensitive, can pick up that. Then, because you have an array out, you have cross correlations. You can see tiny little events in one seismometer. And the geophysicists do their Fourier transforms and match them up, and they pick that same event in another geode. They know the distance between the two. They work out the time it's taken for that little event, tiny little blip, to travel between those geodes. The time then reflects the subsurface geology. It reflects the density, the seismic wave speed, basically. So you're basically measuring seismic velocity in a 3D volume. The sort of surveys that we're doing, at the regional scale, they are going down to about 4 or 5 kilometres. So we can push that further if we take the raw data off the instruments, but for the moment we're looking at 4 to 5 kilometres. When we get into the infill surveys, because the instruments are closer together, we see shallower with more resolution, and usually down to 1 to 2 kilometres. So hopefully that sort of covers it in brief.
Yeah, right. So if I understand this, you want to turn those off if Taylor Swift is around.
Oh, turn it off?
Yes.
No, I think you'd want to leave it on. You get a very nice noise
Okay.
signal. We see that it's really interesting. We see that the large scale survey, which we did with Inflection across their multi-tenement package, you see when the geophysicists produce their noise directional plot, you can see actually which direction the noise is coming from. It comes from the survey is kind of elongated in a sort of northwest trend, and you can see Burke, which is a small town up to the northwest, and you can see Orange or Dubbo, which is down to the southeast, and they are the main noise sources. So yeah, anthropogenic noise is really important. I'm sure Taylor Swift's noise would be very useful for seeing deep low frequencies.
And Brent, I might just add with that too, that at one of Kincora's projects up in the northern part of the belt, close to Alistair's areas as well, we're undertaking the first ANT with gravity survey that's being done at the same time with Fleet. So the idea there is that the gravity hopefully gives you better resolution near surface, and then, as Anthony was explaining, the ANT can really provide some deeper depth profiles to that, and you can integrate it with existing regional geophysics. With a drilling program that we're just going to kick off next month, we'll be able to drill test this target and see how it all fits together and help explain what we're learning.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. That's important to note as well, that that Fleet Space is expanding through into different geophysical methods. Gravity being first off the first out of the gate, if you like, after ambient noise tomography. So yeah, you'll see in the future there will be multiple physical instruments. More or less, the vision is to attach them to the same box, same device, and then you can actually collect as much geophysics as you can in the one location with one deployment.
I'm going to drop out of geology and technology for a second and go somewhere else. New South Wales has traditionally been looked at as a fairly attractive jurisdiction in our industry. Great infrastructure, talented labor force, intelligent regulation. Very recently, I subscribed to a private placement convertible preferred around the Bowden Silver deposit, and I got a little lesson perhaps in New South Wales politics and sociology. Perhaps the three people operating in New South Wales could talk about the politics and sociology of New South Wales and its continued desirability for mining. Sam, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think, Rick, from an explorer perspective, you've got excellent access. You don't have seasonality. You've got very good public data, which means the ability for us to understand where to peg ground and get all the historical data with that ground that comes with it is significantly enhanced. And it's certainly improved our ability to get on the ground and start drilling. In terms of the sort of legislative environment, and one particular case that you've sort of discussed there with the Silver project, I think what that situation needs to work through is the implications to other industries. The Bowden Silver projects had an issue regarding a permitting of a power line. If you can't issue and build new power lines, how is solar, how is wind farms, how is the wider development of the central west of New South Wales and also on a national scale going to be achieved? So I think that will work itself out because of the wider implications of the broader economy is pretty significant. From getting on the ground and an explorer perspective, I think having that infrastructure, having a skilled labour force and a mining and exploration culture there really has helped from our perspective at least.
So you think concerns may be overblown. I understand something about building a mine in Mudgee in the wine district, Peter. But I'd like to ask you the same question: the desirability of New South Wales as a mining jurisdiction, in particular the ARC, juxtaposing, if you will, the mineral endowment and the infrastructure with the increasingly urbanized politics of New South Wales.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, look, there's certainly competing land uses. Every jurisdiction's got its challenges more and more in society these days. I've been working on progressing some projects in Western Australia that have proven very, very difficult to progress and have been essentially stalled for 10 years. It's very important. In my experience, 17 years working in central and western New South Wales, and close to advanced sort of developments and also the Tomingley mine development as well, there was certainly a longer time frame than you might see in other sort of Australian jurisdictions, and obviously the social licence to operate is important. There's a lot of support. There is a mining culture around here. Some of these mines have been there for a long time, so it has to be done right. And I sort of see it in the context of there's a lot of challenges, whether it's native title, different reasons that you need to do those detailed sort of start some of that work earlier rather than later in order to sort of ensure the longer game's intact. But certainly coming back to the prospectivity, it's enormous. These coming back to the ARC systems, they're gold-rich porphyries, extremely economically valuable when you do find those. They can make great underground mines like the Cal GRE 46 Dalwhinnie zone is a high-grade epithermal, sub-epithermal system, which is regularly sort of punching 20 plus grams. So yeah, it's certainly an area that Waratah, we believe we will be able to develop things here. And we really, really strongly believe in the prospectivity and the value of the targets that we're looking for. How's that sound, Rick?
That sounds good. Alistair, you're sitting in Vancouver. You could be exploring anywhere in the world, but you're in New South Wales. Tell us why.
Yeah, so it's a good question. I mean, I spent many years working all over the world in different more questionable jurisdictions, including many years in Latin America. So to come back to New South Wales, it's been wonderful. It's been really a wonderful place to operate and explore. And without getting into the politics, there's a lot of benefits for being there. There's a lot of pre-competitive data available. There's a world-class, arguably the best in the world, database that anybody can access. And this is things like all historical drilling is available to download and interpret and do whatever you want. So any historical work that's been completed previously on these areas is available. So that's an amazing resource which we rely on heavily. And then there's things like grants. The government in New South Wales will provide grants for drilling and things like this. We've received hundreds of thousands of dollars of grants from the government to drill holes. But all in all, I have to say it's been a wonderful place to explore. It's got that strong mining culture that Sam mentioned, and people understand mining for the most part. And the good availability of rigs and labs and people and all the other things that we require to explore, and it's all there. And to be honest, it's one of the best places I've ever had the chance to explore in terms of just getting things done without any dramas or problems.
Anthony, in preparing for this and studying the Arc, I was struck by the aggregate exploration expenditure that's taking place there. Knowing that you represent many companies, if you could tell us something about the majors' interest and the large intermediate interest. It isn't just the three juniors that we have on this call that are there. Can you tell us about some of the other people and the scope of work that's happening generally in the district?
I can probably say a little bit to that, Rick. I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer that question. I'm sure Sam, Peter, Alistair would be much more familiar with that. But as you know, that there are majors in the area, and they have spent a lot of time and money working with people who are on the ground as well. So I think it's a fantastic partnership between the companies with the deep pockets and the companies with the agility to make informed decisions based on their local knowledge. So it's a great place from that context. But I would pass it on to other people to really go into that.
Anybody else want to give me an overview of who the players are in the region?
Well, I might take that one, Rick, and just the M&A side of thing, I think, speaks volumes. You've had change of control transactions recently for Cadia, for North Parks. Peter touched on the success that Evolution's had at Cal since they bought that at Barrick and taken a 3.4 million ounce ore body up to 14 million ounce endowment. And that M&A at the top end of town is filtering into the exploration side. We've had 4 earning JV group agreements in a 12-month period that supports potentially over $200 million worth of exploration. And that's outside of considerable exploration successes like what Peter's been having with Waratah. So there is quite a healthy ecosystem where investors, speculators have been seeing money being made and profits being recycled into the sector.
Now I think what I'd like to do is get into each individual company. And Alistair, I'm going to start with you. Give us a brief overview of the financial part, what your market cap is, how much cash you have. Tell us a sort of an overview of what you're trying to accomplish, and what the most important unanswered question is, how you might answer it, how much money it will take, and where you'll get it. That's a lot for 5 minutes, but give it a shot.
Sure. So in terms of just the statistics, we've got just over 100 million shares outstanding. I think we've got a market cap around about just over 16 million Canadian today. In terms of treasury, I think we're sitting around about 2.5 to 2.6 million Canadian. Just had a number of warrants excised. It's brought another $900,000 into the treasury. But the key thing for us, we've got a portfolio of properties that extend over about 300 kilometers from north to south. It's a huge land position, comprising about 7,000 square kilometers of ground, all of which we acquired through staking open ground. So it's a very simple, clean story. And we've got a large partnership with AngloGold Ashanti, which part addresses the how we're financing this exploration. So we've got a deal with Anglo. It's a multi-year partnership type agreement. It's a 4-stage agreement where phase 1, AngloGold is funding 10 million Australian dollars drilling across the entire portfolio of targets. So we've got about 35 major centres, which we're poking holes into for the very first time. So critically, these are all targets that have never been drill tested before. This is an important point that's often lost on people, but we're drilling big, complex magnetic features that are 2 hours up a highway from Cadia. So these are big features. AngloGold is funding that essentially scout drilling program. So we're drilling through the sediments and doing short diamond holes into the prospective Ordovician basement rocks. And I say, if we're not seeing what we need to see, we move on to the next one. So drill and kill type strategy. At the end of that phase 1 period, AngloGold retains the right to select up to 5 individual projects where it can move forward. And they have the option to earn up to 65% in phases 2 and 3 by spending $27 million on each of the projects to get to 65%. And then to get to 75%, Anglo is required to deliver a pre-feasibility study with a minimum 2 million ounce measured and indicated resource. And at that point, AngloGold cedes back to Inflection either a 1 or 2% net smelter royalty as well. So we're covered in theory all the way through to delivery of a pre-feasibility study, which as I'm sure you know, it'd be a very expensive endeavor drilling off one of these vertically extensive porphyries. And I've always said it, you know, drilling for these porphyries is not really the domain of the junior explorers. I think it's a very tough thing to do without some sort of partnership with a major mining company. So it's really we're working hand in hand with AngloGold, who've been an excellent partner to date, and we've already identified a number of targets that we think have the potential to deliver one of these alkalic porphyry systems. But it's a long road, but we're doing it with capital provided by AngloGold.
3 questions. First of all, the $10 million number and the $27 million number, is that an Australian or Canadian or US dollar number?
Sorry, these are all Australian dollars. Yes.
Thank you. The second question is, when do they vest? Do they vest after $10 million?
So the $10 million gives them 0 interest in any of the projects. But what they can do, they can convert that phase 1 into a 9.9% ownership of the company at that point. So we will issue them shares to that amount. So approximately, let's say 10 million shares if it was to happen today. Okay. Which will have got $10 million worth of exploration for. And then that triggers phase 2. Now, what I didn't mention is AngloGold elected already to select one project as a phase 2 project. So we're running phase 1 and phase 2 in parallel, the $10 million program, and we're also starting that $27 million program on a project called Duck Creek, which has returned some encouraging results to date.
And finally, Alistair, what's the non-exploration burn? How much does it cost for you to keep the company alive?
So we're running around about $65,000 a month. So we're fairly lean. We've got a shared office in Vancouver. We don't have an office in Australia at all. And essentially the whole technical team in Australia is paid for by AngloGold.
Great. Peter, you're up next. Give us an overview. Tell us the value proposition. Tell us what you're trying to accomplish and how you're trying to accomplish. And also, of course, the market cap and the cash.
No problem. Thanks, Rick. Waratah made an acquisition sort of in January. So we're sort of 6 months into a strategy whereby we've reinterpreted an old goldfield, which is nearby Cadia, which had previously been interpreted as orogenic or a late-stage porphyry system. We did due diligence on that, which was very compelling, that it actually represents a Cal-style alkalic epithermal field, which we know now the knowledge of the industry now knows that those things can be in the upper levels of the alkalic fertile porphyries. And again, sort of coming back to, it was widely known actually the area nearby had been the earliest copper porphyry discovered in New South Wales back in the late 60s. So we're close to an area of smoke, if you like. So it's a technical strategy which is built off, I guess, a lot of experience and learnings in the belt, and then just taking particular notice of these systems can not necessarily be copper anomalies; they can be these gold systems. So we, I guess, differentiate ourselves that we see, we see the porphyry potential. The upper levels of the system is carrying a lot of gold in the epithermals, so we're drilling out gold epithermals. And similar to Cal, they haven't really been motivated to go pursuing the fertile porphyries there because they've found upwards of 14 million ounces of epithermal gold there. So we think that's not a bad sort of fallback. But we're going down the path of building up the multi-element data set and the alteration data set to be able to vector towards the porphyry. We've got a lot of features there that are suggesting we've got Cadia-type porphyries driving the system there. Things like red rock alteration, lots of hematite, lots of albite, potassium feldspar, these sorts of features that give us a lot of confidence that we're dealing with the right type of porphyry system in terms of the wall rock porphyries. And we've got good preservation, the fact that we've got those. So that's the technical backdrop, and we've been drilling ever since we got the asset. We've been drilling and we haven't stopped. We've just raised $5 million to sustain a more longer-term drilling campaign, and we'll look to expand that as we're getting encouraging results come through. Corporately, it's been a turnaround story. I mean, a year ago, we did a name change. The company prior to my involvement were exploring for graphite in Mozambique, of all places. So there's been a complete turnaround and pivot to Australian gold. And so the company did a consolidation of capital about 12 months ago, which put it in good shape in terms of doing the acquisition, backing the acquisition into it. Our market cap today is somewhere around 60 million. 12 months ago we were 5 million. So we're on a pretty exciting trajectory at the moment. We're looking to maintain that momentum, because I think it's a pretty exciting story, because when we're drilling from surface, we're RC drilling at the moment, and we're getting multiple 100-gram metre hits essentially, which is good no matter what sort of system you want to promote.
Understatement. How much cash do you have, and how long will it take? How long will it last you between exploration and G&A? I take it that you're sole funded. You don't have a deep pocket like Anglo Gold sitting next to you.
Yeah, we are running alone at the moment, and we're finding that our market cap, is obviously making it much easier for us to do that. They're not deep drill holes that we're planning to do. We're just looking to build up. They're up to 300 metre deep RC holes, so we've got a high capacity, a large RC rig operating at the moment, which is a useful tool because it's getting down and being able to map out the geometries of mineralised zones. So no, we're running it alone for now. The strategy and the asset was strong because it enables us to run a shallow gold strategy alongside, if you like, the porphyry vectoring strategy. Yep.
And how long will the 5 million that you just raised last you?
Sorry, Rick. Yes. It'll enable aggressive exploration sort of over the next 6 months, which will be a key time for us, I think. We're just starting to see those 100-gram metre hits, so we're starting to have the knowledge breakthrough of the high-grade zones and the controls on those. So hopefully we can deliver surprises, in that 6 months in terms of more high-grade and wider gold zones in the epithermals. Or hopefully, touch wood, we get surprises on the porphyry front, because we're seeing increasing copper with depth in some of these targets.
Sam, I think your internet connection's a bit weak, so you're going to have to speak close to the mic. If you could answer effectively the same question for us, tell us the value proposition, tell us the market cap, tell us how much cash you have, tell us how you fund trying to deliver the prize.
Yeah, no, thanks, Rick. 12 million market cap Aussie, cash and shares about 1.6. What we've tried to do very deliberately in the last 12 months is change our business model. We've have bought out our asset level partner in Mongolia, in New South Wales, so we own 100% of our licenses. We've divested our Mongolian assets, and we've looked to bring in partners, as we've touched on. Porphyries do take time, they do take reasonable capital. So we've brought in Earth AI, who's drilling one of our projects as we speak at the moment. Fleet Space is doing a geophysical survey with us at the moment for Ningen, and we brought in Anglo Gold Ashanti as well for 2 of our projects in the northern part of the belt. So that realignment of our business model really hopefully provides a bit better runway and better alignment to give these assets really the meters they need. Across the portfolio, there's 12 projects over 4,000 square k's. We've got some pretty advanced projects in the southern part of the belt. Part of the North Park's intrusive complex is at Trundle. Part of the Cow system is our Fairholme projects. They're our 100% owned projects that we're looking to do ourselves. But with our earlier stage projects, that's where we've tried to bring in those partners to build up and do 10,000 metres of drilling in the next 6 months, get up to effectively a 30,000 metre runway is what we see these projects needing. And ultimately in this market, with our market cap today, looking to do that with partner funding while we look at doing further deals on some of these other assets we still retain 100% of.
Thank you. In my experience, making money as an outside investor in exploration requires me to understand each company's principal unanswered question. I believe that you add value in exploration by increasing the market's knowledge of whatever your focused project is. So I would like each of you very briefly to describe for me what the most important unanswered question is, and how much time it will take me to get a yes answer, if I get a yes answer. I'll give you each 30 or 40 seconds to think about this while I prime Brent to ask questions around that later. But Sam, I'd like you to tell me where you add the most value. What's the most important unanswered question that you have in front of you? When might I expect an answer? And do you have enough money to get me an answer?
Yeah, no, I completely get where you're coming from there, Rick. Ultimately, we as an industry drive value by making a big discovery. And I guess that's the pointy end of the needle that we think we're at starting to do with Anglo Gold Ashanti drilling at Ningen. We've got the fleet survey ongoing at the moment. We'll start drilling in the northern part of the belt, 6 to 8 targets before end of year, and it's pretty quick turnaround of yes or no. Is that part of the belt what we think it is? And what we think it is potentially a new district.
Thank you. Peter, same question.
Yeah, no problem. It's about making a tier 1 discovery next door to Cadia, 5 kilometres off the Cadia project boundary. The fertility of the system is indicating we've got potential to find a Cadia type porphyry ore body connected to the epithermal veins. And you look at other mines and discoveries that have been made, and the knowledge breakthroughs for the industry that they provide in terms of demonstrating the epithermal's connection to the fertile porphyries. I think we've got a good chance. And it's shallow drilling, so this will happen over the next 6-month period, I believe.
Great. And for the record, this is ginger beer.
I'm disappointed, Rick. Very disappointed.
Later, Brent. Alistair, I want to ask you the same question. What's the unanswered question I have to look forward to? Do you have enough money to get me there?
Yeah, well, that's the easy one. So we have a partnership with Anglo Gold, so that we're fully funded to test all of these targets. I mean, the real big one is, can we find one of these big alkalic systems under a blanket of cover? And ultimately, with our phase 1 program, which I mentioned right now, I think that will come to its conclusion in the first half of next year. And then at that point, Anglo Gold hopefully will select more than one project to take forward. But I would like to think in the next 18 months, we'll should have got something. If we can't do something in the next 18 months, then I think that'll, we need to ask ourselves some serious questions, frankly. But yes, it's really about making discoveries. We've got one target called Duck Creek, which we're very excited about, and we've got all of the right geochemistry, the right alteration, rocks at the right age, a lot of the right characteristics that are getting experts in this particular field all excited. So, we think we're we're on the cusp of something, but it's a challenge. We're looking for something very very specific under a thick blanket of cover, but we think the prize is worth the wait. And having this partnership with AngloGold, we think we've de-risked it from a shareholder's perspective, and ultimately, we're not having to raise capital anytime soon.
Brent, I'm the financial guy. You're the rock hound. Any technical questions that you want to ask any of these gentlemen about any of their projects?
Yeah, I'll throw one at Alistair. What is it that Anglo saw at Duck Creek, kind of specifically, that brought them into phase 2? And what do you need to see in this phase 2 drilling to actually, confirm they're going to keep going?
Well, I'll start with the latter parts first. I mean, obviously, a nice intercept of copper and gold is the obvious answer to that one. But I think in terms of what brought them in, we own 100% of it. It's a very clean, simple story, royalty-free. We have a team of experts in this particular field of these alkalic systems, and ultimately a large target. The key area or core area is about a 4 by 5 kilometer area. And at that point, we would drilled 6 holes, I think it was, into this target, and 5 of the 6 had returned favorable alteration and geochemistry. We'd also got
that's what I'm asking about. What did they see in the core?
Yeah.
Brought
Okay.
them in for phase 2.
So we're looking at the right alteration. So what we're recognizing is that hematitic sort of staining that we were talking about a little bit earlier. We're seeing a lot of albitic flooding. So this is albite. You often find that in proximity to these porphyry systems. We're also seeing minor chalcopyrite, occasional bleb of bornite. We're also seeing porphyry-style veinlets. Not a lot, but early on we got porphyry-style veinlets in the first handful of holes. So what we confirmed is we're in a system. What we hadn't at that time, and still haven't, frankly, is we haven't tagged one of these pencil porphyries. But we were seeing a lot of the right characteristics, the right geochemistry, and rocks of the right age. And certainly there's a lot of room in the big search space, which we are working on refining right now with the A&T and the additional geophysics and additional drilling.
Okay, great. Let me throw this at you, Peter. Tell me if I'm thinking right. What I'm seeing is, like your project, Spur, the mineralisation and alteration has gone clear to the surface, whereas these really high-grade Cadia East and Ridgeway, they're confined, and the alteration as such doesn't really go to the surface. Is that confining environment what's required to form a Cadia East or Ridgeway? And does that imply that all the fluids that you're seeing at surface means there may not be something at depth? Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a good question that I'll talk around a bit, Brent. The porphyries, I worked at Cadia Valley, so I had a closer look at them, but there's certainly what's been spoken about before, these post-collisional type porphyries in the overall tectonics. So there's an important structural control to these things ultimately, especially Ridgeway, very strong structural control there. So, but it's of that time when that was happening. We call it the Benambran time, which was 435 million years ago. So it's sort of reading the rocks and pulling apart the story to be able to identify the positions back in that time that were conducive to trap the fluids and preserve them. I wouldn't read much into the fact that we've got mineralisation and alteration at surface, other than the fact that we're in the system. The fact that we've got pervasive zones of plus 50 metres of strongly developed hematite, albite, tourmaline alteration, that tells me, like it did tell the discoverers of Ridgeway and Cadia East, that you're within a few hundred metres of a sweet spot within those alkalic porphyries. It's been written up quite widely that that was one of the key indicators was the red rock alteration. Once you convince you're in the overall system, the red rock alteration was really, really key, and ultimately that was only a few hundred metres away from the ore bodies. So Yeah, look, I do believe we're in amongst the system there, very much so. It's from surface. Um, again, it's a search space. We're sort of off the margins in the wall rock next to what is a very extensively drilled area, being the intrusive complex. So that was the magnetic high feature. But if you look in the detail again, Ware Ridgeway, Cadia East, the two biggest ones in the belt, emerging discoveries like Boda, the Cal epithermal mineralisation, a lot of recent work is showing you've got a lot of hematite porphyry alteration there as well, which is really starting to tell us there could be a link between the alkalics and those epithermals. That's still emerging. That'll be a big breakthrough if we can see definitive, geochron and data pointing to that. But I think, that how much gold those epithermals are carrying is also telling you that, it's connected to a really big system. So does that make sense, Brent? I'm very encouraged the fact that we're seeing that at surface.
Sure, I buy that. But at the time, presently, you're not planning on drilling any really deep hills chasing the porphyry. You're drilling out the near surface epithermals. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're doing multiple 300-meter RC holes. We don't need to put too many, deep holes in at this stage. We'll certainly build towards that. I'd say maybe in a few months' time, we're starting to put those in the mix. But it's about maintaining momentum on these stories, especially when you're a junior and we're trying to build our own momentum here. It's about being smart about how we develop it. Like at Cal, they're 14 million ounces in and they failed to find the alkalic porphyry. So yeah, I think that's okay. The opportunity here.
All right, good. Thanks. That's all I've got, Rick.
All right. Well, I want to thank all of our participants, and I want each of you to leave contact details where the people who view this can find you. One of my pet peeves with watching stuff like this is I get all excited about a story and I don't know how to continue other than going online. So, Sam, if people want to know more about Kincora, who do they contact and how do they reach that person?
Yeah, no, happy to take questions personally, Rick. Refer on to the technical team as needed. Email address and phone number, I'll make sure all those contact details are sent through. They're on all our press releases and presentations.
Peter, same question for you.
Yeah, absolutely, Rick. I'd welcome anyone reaching out. There's a lot of people sort of getting engaged and sort of seeing what we're doing and the opportunity that's emerging. So I'll make sure the details are left with you.
Thank you. Alistair?
Website is the best place, inflectionresources.com. And you can reach out to me directly. It's Alistair at inflectionresources.com. We're across all the social media, LinkedIn, things like this. But yeah, the website is a great spot to land and get all the telephone numbers for the key people.
And Anthony, if there are issuers in particular who are interested in using your exploration services, how do they find you?
Fleetspace.com is the best place to look. You'll find all of the details of the methodologies that Fleet is rolling out. You find all details about how it works. And there's a really good resources section in their website where there are specific case studies of different areas that FleetSpace worked in and kind of use case scenarios for the different technologies that Fleet is using. So I really encourage people to check out the website. Otherwise, if you want to meet, get in touch personally, I'm on LinkedIn and social media, so get in touch with me. But yeah, definitely via the FleetSpace website. Thanks.
And Brent, assuming that people want to reach out to you, I understand you're trying to be retired, but you're failing. How do they do that?
Right. Probably the best way is through explorationinsights.com, which is a newsletter I started. Now Joe Mazumdar writes, and I work with Joe. It's, in my opinion, the best technical, independent research on junior mining companies in the industry. So that's explorationinsights.com.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for today's presentation. I learned a lot about the Macquarie Arc. I learned a lot about your companies. I appreciate the process. Thank you so much for your participation in today's discussion.